Hi, hello to everyone. Thank you very much for joining our masterclass. Today we are going to explain Inulin and products that comes from Inulin. This is a really interesting topic because a lot of you ask about this product. And today we are going to make an introduction. I'm going to explain a little bit of the history about the Inulin and me in that case, because we started, we can say, to work together with Inulin around 10 years ago. And then we have a presentation where I'm going to introduce to you a little bit about what is Inulin, different types of Inulin. I will show you different recipes where we can use different types of Inulin and oligofructose, like you will see. And during this time, I'm going also to introduce our big concept extended online course. This is just, we have started the editions 24 and 25, and I want just to invest like 5 minutes to explain a little bit that course. And finally, I will explain the recipes, no? These recipes where we are going to use different types of Inulin and oligofructose, okay? Let's go to start. I'm going to explain a little bit why we have started to use Inulin long time ago. The point is that there was a day, long time ago, like 10, 12 years ago, that I realized that the pastry that I was producing was not so healthy at all. And I started to try to reduce sugars in recipes like, for example, creamy textures, compotes, and mousses. And doing this exercise of reduce sugar, I started to have a lot of problems when I was frozen and thawing the different textures of this kind of pastry. And the point is that I realized that the main stability in recipes comes from a parameter that we explain in our courses that called dry extract, no? Because in the past, when I have problems like syneresis in my recipes, I was calling to my friends, and my friends, they were telling me, Jordi, put more gelatin and this is going to solve, no? And the point is that it's not gelatin that we have to use when we have syneresis. The point is that we need, in general, to add more dry extract. Dry extract is everything that is not water inside of the recipes. That means that when we are going to use ingredients like, for example, butter, like eggs, like sugar, they have a part that can be water, no? For example, in sugar, we have a really small part of water, like 2 or 3% of water, and the rest, 99% of the ingredient is dry extract. Then we have ingredients like butter that, for example, has around 24-26% of dry extract, and the rest, until 100%, we have water. That means that butter is an ingredient that gives us a lot of dry extract in one recipe. And then we have the example of egg whites, for example, that egg whites that we can use in a recipe in order to make a meringue. They have not too much dry extract, like, for example, around 12% of dry extract, mainly proteins, and the rest, until 100%, is around water. No? That means that all the ingredients that we use in pastry, in general, they give us more or less dry extract, and this helps us to build the stability in the recipes. This is really important when we are going to freeze and thaw, because when we freeze and thaw, what we do is to change the size of the molecules of water. That means that every molecule of water, yes, water, because in pastry, even if you don't use water, still you don't use water, and you don't see water in your recipes, in pastry we are using ingredients like eggs, butter, cream, etc., that they contain water. No? That means that this water that we are going to freeze and thaw is going to win like 10% of volume. And this 10% of volume that we are going to win will be like ice crystals that they are going to break the structures that we created, for example, in the cooking process of a lemon cream. And for this reason, these structures that we create, they are going to give us like free water that once we defreeze and thaw the texture, we will have like linking water outside of the recipe. And the way of control this is controlling dry extract, Also, controlling the water catchment capacity is another parameter that we explain in our courses, because this parameter is related to some of the molecules that we use in pastry, like proteins or fibers, that they have huge ability to catch the water and control the water through the freezing and thaw process. And then it's really important the techniques that we are using in order to build this kind of textures, like gelé textures, compotes, creamy textures in many directions, like ganache, like filling for macarons or mousses. No? These techniques are thickening, gelation, emulsion, and aeration. And these three parameters, dry extract, water catchment capacity, and techniques, are the three key points that give us stability when we are going to create a recipe from scratch. Okay? That means that this is something that we need to keep in mind. Why we are here today? We are here today because we are going to explain one ingredient that is really important for the dry extract and the water catchment capacity, and also works in the different techniques that we can use in order to create the textures. No? That means that we are going to speak about inulin because, like I started explaining at the beginning, long time ago, when I started to try to make healthier pastry, that was not easy because you start to reduce sugar, you start to reduce fat, but you don't add any ingredient that is going to balance the situation. And the dry extract in the recipes, you have more water, and you freeze and thaw, and you have always water linking out. Sometimes you have even soups that is not possible to use the recipes in pastry. No? That means that was really important to start to use inulin and fibers in general, because I think that the huge opportunity in pastry is fibers, because you will see later why. No? And fibers give us the capacity to pour dry extract inside of the recipes, and this helps us to keep the stability, keeping the same experience or even better of the classic pastry. No? That means that we can say that the fibers that we are going to explain today, some of them, they can help us to reduce sweetness in the recipes. Some of them, they can help us to reduce fat, for example, and some of them, they are going to help us to increase sweetness and, for example, reduce sugar or remove sugar from the recipes. No? That means that now we have different fibers in the market, different functions. Sometimes in our courses, there is people that ask me, but Jordi, with Naturemul or with Inulin, can we put this fiber everywhere and use just one fiber for everything? No, this is not possible because each fiber has different functions. No? That means that, for example, we have jelly, no? Jelly agents that are fibers. No? Let's go to say fibers with gelling properties, like, for example, agar-agar, like iota, or like pectin, that help us to gelation in the creation of the textures in the part of gelation. Then we have fibers that they have the ability to thick the textures, no? Like, for example, wargam, locust bean gum, psyllium, flax fiber, and all these fibers, they have the ability to thick. That is another technique, another way to control the water that we have in pastry. And then we have another fiber that, for example, is Naturemul from Sosa Company, citrus fiber, that give us the capacity to bring together fat and water inside of the recipes of pastry, because in general, in classic pastries, we are using egg yolks and dairy products, because these two products, they have the ability to emulsify, to bring together fat and water. No? And there is one fiber that has the ability to make something really similar to the lecithin from egg yolks or the proteins of dairy products. That means that each fiber has different properties. Today, I will be focused in inulin, HP, and oligofructose. That are three fibers that are really interesting for this main purpose, that is or reduction of sugar or reduction of fat, or increasing fiber in the recipes and keeping the sweetness in the recipe. Let's go to start with the first part of the presentation. I'm going just to read because we prepared a really amazing presentation with the team. No? The first question, what is inulin? Inulin is a type of fiber, and of natural origin that thanks to its neutral taste, dry extract content and low sweetness help us to create textures that maximize the flavor of the main ingredient and keep the balanced sweetness level. No? That means that in recipes, for example, no? Imagine that we have a compote, a mango compote, that we are using, for example, 20-25% of sugar. This is a really common problem that we can have in classic pastry, no? That we use, for example, in compotes or gelée textures, a lot of sugar. We can use inulin, for example, in order to reduce the quantity of sugar. And for example, what we can do is instead of use 25% of sugar, we can use just 15% of sugar, and 10% of the sugar we are going to switch to inulin. This is going to help us to reduce sweetness, maximize the flavor, because we will have not over sweet flavor in the mango compote, and like that the experience for us, for the customer, will be much better. Okay, let's go to the next part of the presentation. This is really interesting, no? It took me time to understand the difference between sugar saccharose and a fiber, no? And here you see the picture. What type of molecule is it? Inulin is a polysaccharide, and it's qualified like soluble fiber, no? That means that here we have one molecule of glucose, and then minimum like 2 molecules of fructose attached to the molecule of glucose. And it's really funny because when you see this picture, saccharose, sugar, the common sugar that is not good for health, not that we use in a really big quantity sometimes in pastry, is just glucose and fructose. 2 molecules, one molecule together to the other one. No? And when you see this picture, you can see like, oh, wow, this is like sugar but with more fructose, no? And here is the point, no? The thing is that when we ingest this kind of fiber, this fiber in our digestion process cannot be cut. The links that there is with the different fructose and glucose cannot be cut, all of them, by the enzymes that we have in the digestion system. That means that they go through the intestine and they are going to feed the bacteria that we have in our intestine. And this is really interesting because not only we are going to avoid the absorption of the sugar, and this sugar, this glucose is going to go to the blood levels and is going to increase the glycemic index of our body. If not, we are going to feed the bacteria, and this is really interesting because it works like a prebiotic. That means that the difference between fiber and sugar is really huge, no? Fiber helps us to build pastry, healthier pastry, no? That means that we are going to reduce sugar, for example, we are going to reduce fat, and we are going to use inulin or other fibers that helps us to create healthier pastry and introduce inside of the textures a prebiotic that is really good for our health, okay? Let's go to the next part of the presentation. Where does it come from? No? Naturally present in a lot of vegetables, fruits, cereals, onions, bananas, wheat. That means that inulin is everywhere, more or less, in the vegetables, no? But the extraction, the production, comes from the chicory roots. Why they decided to use chicory roots in order to extract inulin and not bananas or not onions? Because in chicory roots we have the maximum concentration that we can find in the vegetables, that is 20% naturally present inulin inside of the chicory roots. And for this reason, in general, there is different companies that they extract this inulin in the center of Europe. That means that countries like, for example, Netherlands, Germany, Belgium, they produce chicory roots, and they extract from these chicory roots the different inulins that we can produce, no? And also there is companies in Mexico, for example, they are producing inulin from agave syrup. That also is really interesting to use in pastry. That means that it's a completely natural ingredient that comes from vegetables, okay? Composition. Inulin is made up from a linear chain of fructose, like we saw, no? We have always the first that is glucose, and then we have many molecules of fructose. This, as I mentioned, can be from one glucose and two fructose molecules. That means that we will have like 3 molecules. And then we can find like 60 molecules in one long chain. No? This will be, for example, inulin HP that we are going to explain later. More long, not the longer are the chains, they have more water catchment capacity. No? That means that when we have long chains like in inulin HP, that they are until 60 times molecules of fructose and 1 glucose, this has a really crazy properties to catch the water. Even can dry the water. No, you can mix like half water, half of this inulin, and you will see that the inulin is going to absorb all the water, and you have a really strong, like a stone texture. No, and then we have other products like oligofructose that you will see that we have a short chains that they have less water catchment capacity and more sweetness capacity. And that means that the difference between, not the main difference between long chains and small chains is that small chains, they are going to sweet much more the recipes and they have less water catchment capacity. And then when we have, for example, inulin HP or inulin in hot from Sousa company, that we have really long chains, they have the ability to catch more water and the reduction of sweetness because they are not sweet at all. Okay, let's go to the next point. Here you can see that we have dry extract and high water catchment capacity is already something that I already mentioned. Types of inulin, like I explained, and now we have different inulin, like we will see to the next, I think, page, that you will see that there is long and short chains, no? And also a mix of long and short chains. No? Let's go to explain the types of inulin. Okay, the first one that you have here is the inulin, no? Native inulin or inulin in coal from Sousa company, and this inulin is made for short chains and long chains. They can go from 2, more or less, from 10 molecules, until 60. That means that they can have until 60 times the fructose attached to the glucose, no? From 10 to 60. And it's a mix of short chains and long chains. The function of that inulin, the inulin in coal, the function is reduction of sugar, mainly the focus. That means that, for example, I have one recipe with one process that is oversweet, and I want to reduce the sweetness. No, and what is the solution, Jordi, in that recipe? If you want to reduce the sweetness, one option is to use native inulin. And native inulin you can substitute, in general, 1:1, in recipes like gelée textures, like creamy textures, like mousses, in order to reduce the sweetness. That means that, as I was explaining, if you have a compote or, for example, a creamy that is oversweet, you can use, you can change or you can switch a part of the sugar for inulin. How much? It depends the sweetness that you want to achieve. No? In general, for example, when we do our course of formulation and we explain sweetness, we recommend, in order to have a balanced sweetness, not more than 20% of sugars in our pastry, no? And this percentage, that comes from our experience, because since long time we are teaching. No? That means that what we do is, if we see that, no, for example, like I mentioned, no, mango compote has 25% of added sugar, and then we have the naturally present sugar that we have inside of the mango, in total will be too much sugar. That means that a kind of recipe with mango, pectin, sugar, for example, that has 25% of sugar, really easy, can have like 40% of total sugar, and this is oversweet, no? For this reason, what we can do is like reduce the sugar contents from 25 until only 10%, and this 15%, if we need, we can add with inulin in order to keep the same stability, because for sure, if we add only mango in that percentage, no, that means that if I reduce the sugar from 25 to 10%, and this 15% that I'm going to add will be just mango, I'm going to add too much water to the recipe, and when I'm going to freeze and thaw, this is going to lose the stability. That means that what we need to do is, okay, this is oversweet, let's go to try to reduce, for example, 10% of sugar or 15% of sugar, and we replace per inulin. And this inulin will give us dry extract and really high water catchment capacity. That means that the final texture will be less sweet and we will have much more stability. This is just one example. Then later I'm going to show you one recipe and I will introduce inulin inside of one recipe, native inulin. Now let's move to the second one, HP inulin. HP inulin, it means high performance inulin. In Sosa company, they sell like inulin in hot, okay? And this inulin needs to be heated. That means that we need to add in some part of the process that we need to bring until around 70, 80 degrees in order to hydrate all the long chains that we have inside in the right direction, because if not, then we can feel like sandy texture, okay? The native inulin, I didn't tell to you, but don't need to be heated. That means that at 20 degrees, 30 degrees, the dispersion will be perfect. The HP inulin needs to be heated, okay? This inulin has long chains of fructose. No? That means that we have one molecule of glucose, the first one, and then we have really long chains of fructose. And for this reason, has the ability to catch a lot of water. And if we translate this huge ability to catch the water in the tasting process, we can feel like a kind of fatty sensation. For this reason, this kind of fiber, no, HP inulin, we are going to use in order to replace fat. No? One example, imagine that we have one creamy texture, no? A chocolate creamy texture that contains dairy products, contains dark chocolate, and we want to reduce fat, or for example, we want to avoid the use of dairy products, but we want to keep the same experience. No? And imagine that recipe that in total has like 12% of cacao butter that comes from the chocolate, that is fat, and then has 10% more fat that comes from the dairy products, okay? And we are going just to say, okay, we are going to remove dairy products, we are going to remove cream, milk, we are going to add water to the recipe, one emulsifier that can be lecithin, simple, no? That means that we will have like water, lecithin, and chocolate, but we need to replace the amount of fat that we removed from the dairy products. And here there is opportunity to use, for example, to use inulin HP. This inulin HP in between, I recommend to you not more than 10% in the recipes, because if we overuse in the recipes, the texture is going to dry very fast. No? That means that using between 5 to 10% of inulin HP in the recipes, we will have like the same texture that we had in the beginning with the dairy products. Something similar, it's not exactly the same, because it's not the same to work, for example, only with fibres in order to replace fatty sensation that works with fat, that they have a really different experience in our mouth. But it's something that is going to help us to work like in the direction of the fat. In that recipe that I explained of dark chocolate creamy, we are reducing the fat, adding fiber. But still we have cacao butter that is going to give us a really good experience, no? And then we have the option that can be, okay, let's go to remove all the fat from the recipe and let's go to work only with inulin HP in order to have fatty sensation or something similar and avoid the use of fat. This can be interesting when we want to reduce calories in our pastry. Why? Because 1 gram of fiber is 2 calories, 1 gram of fat is 9 calories. That means that transforming the fat that we have in the recipes in inulin, we are going to reduce in a really big percentage the quantity of calories that we have in that texture. Okay, that means that here we have with inulin HP opportunity of reduce fat, one option, reduction of fat, or just remove the fat from the recipe and works with that fiber in order to replace the fatty sensation. I repeat, it will be not the same, but it's something similar, the sensation of the fat and the long chain inulin, in that case it's P-inulin, okay? Native inulin also has the capacity to give us a kind of fatty sensation, but it's in a really low capacity, because the one that has no high water catchment capacity and high capacity to give us fatty sensation is HP-inulin. And then we move to the final one, that is oligofructose. Oligofructose is a fiber that comes from the native inulin. No? What they do is, using enzymes, they cut the chains, and what they do is just small chains, no? That they can have like 4, 5, 2, 3, maximum 10 different molecules in the chains that we can find in the oligofructose. And because they are short chains, and because we have sugar, no, many particles of sugar, they are free, oligofructose is more sweet. No? In general, in oligofructose, we have around like between 15 to 20% of free sugars inside of the product. In native inulin, we have maximum, in general, around 10% of free sugars. That means that mainly is fiber inside of the product. And HP inulin doesn't have sugar at all. It's 99.5% of fiber. And in native inulin and oligofructose, we can find a small proportions of sugars, no? That will be glucose or fructose, or one glucose attached to one fructose. That is the kind of molecules of sugar that we can find inside of inulin. What is the purpose to use oligofructose in one recipe? Oligofructose is really interesting because it's like half sweet than sugar. No, that means that if 1% of sugar is going to give us 1 point of sweetness, 1% of oligofructose is going to give us between 0.4, 0.5. It depends the kind of oligofructose that we are using. No, that means that even that if we are going to use oligofructose in one recipe, we are going to reduce sweetness. We are going to keep a little bit of sweetness, because if we compare with inulin, native inulin, for example, 1% of native inulin is 0.1 sweetness points. No? That means that inulin is 10 times less sweet than sugar, and oligofructose is half sweet than sugar. No? That means that still in oligofructose we are going to keep a little bit of the sweetness, and then we can use, for example, to work with sugar-free recipes, and like that, using a fiber to sweeten the recipes, okay? I think that this was the introduction. I think that this is what we are going to explain until now. Now I want just to share with you the video of our Big Concept Extended online course, where we explain many things that we are sharing with you right now, but in extended version. And then I will make just a quick introduction, a really small introduction of that course, and I will finish explaining the different recipes that we have in that presentation. And finally, we will have the questions that I'm going to answer for sure, all the questions that you share with us. Let's go to see the video, and we see in different minutes, in 2 minutes. World Pastry Champion and the creator of the Big Concept method. Together with my team, I have created a unique online pastry course. Everything started when I was 14 years old, working in my parents' bakery. With time, I discovered that pastry was my language, my way to communicate and express myself. With a lot of training and experience under my belt, in 2011, I won the World Pastry Championship. This was a very special moment that became a turning point in my life. After becoming World Pastry Champion, I realized I wasn't free creating my recipes. and I started following a healthy lifestyle. But my recipes did not reflect that. I understood that the world has changed, but pastry remained the same. I started studying each recipe. I needed the freedom to create my recipes, and I needed a method. I spent a lot of time investigating ingredients and techniques, looking for answers to my questions. And this was the beginning of the big concept method, a method to create healthier, lighter, and tastier recipes from scratch. In 2015, I opened my pastry school in Viladecans, where we have taught the method to more than 1,000 students. In 2020, we opened our R&D center and created this unique online course. Now you can take this course.
We introduce you to the online extended version of the Big Concept course. In this course, composed of 4 different parts, you will learn how to formulate and create your own pastry recipes. In the first part, you will learn everything about water, fats, proteins, and carbohydrates, the molecules that make up all our ingredients. Knowing their physicochemical and functional properties will give you the knowledge that you need to work with any pastry ingredient. Through the second part, you will be able to master emulsification, aeration, thickening, and gelation, 4 techniques that are essential for creating perfectly balanced pastry textures. In the third part, you will learn how to formulate recipes using the Big Concept method. We will show you over 30 practical cases and give you the keys to create healthier, lighter, and tastier recipes. In the last part, we will show you step by step how to execute a collection of pastry creations. We will give you many practical tips so you can apply them in your daily work. The course includes more than 40 hours of videos, a theory book of over 300 pages, and countless recipes. You will also be able to participate in forums and live webinars to solve all your doubts and interact with other students. You will put your knowledge to test, with different assignments and self-evaluation tests, and by completing them, you will earn your training certificate. But don't worry, we will guide you and help you all along the way.
If you love pastry and want to understand all the processes and reactions behind your recipes, this is the course you have been waiting for.
It is a perfect course for any pastry chef wanting to share their values through their creations.
Maybe you want to redesign and adapt your recipes so that they fit better your customers' needs.
Or you need to balance your recipes, resolving any stability, texture, or taste issues.
And if you are looking for a course to learn how to save time and resources, look no more.
To take the course, you only need a device with internet connection, pen, paper, and a desire to learn.
Throughout this course, we will give you all the tools that you need to become independent at creating your own pastry collection.
Master the Big Concept method and tap into your infinite creative potential.
You will be surprised at what you can achieve once you complete this course.
Come and join us. Let's go, I'm already here. I'm going just to make a quick introduction of our Big Concept Extended online course, and then let's go to move to the recipes. We created that course around the pandemic, more or less in the 2020, and we started to teach this. We already have the 24 and the 25 edition of the Big Concept Online Extended course. That means that more than 1,000 people, they were trained with that course. And in that course, why it's so interesting? Because in that course, we explain pastry from the beginning, no? For example, what we do is we start explaining molecules, why molecules are so important. Because when we understand molecules in pastry, like for example, fibres, like proteins, like sugars, like starches, for example, fats, the different molecules that we use in the different ingredients that we use in pastry, we can start understanding the function of the ingredients inside of our recipes. That means that the first module that we do in our course is the explanation of the molecules. Then, for sure, we explain also ingredients, and then we move to the techniques. Techniques, as I mentioned, I was explaining to you that we have like 4 different techniques that we use in order to create textures like compotes, creamies, or mousses textures that are thickening, that help us to change the mobility of the water. Then we have emulsion that help us to bring together fat and water inside of the recipes. Then we have gelation technique that is really important in order to set the water that we have on the recipes. And finally, we have aeration that in general in pastry we use, for example, cream, and we use meringues, but there is many different types of meringues that we can use, and this is really interesting, for example, in order to reduce sugar in pastry or create lighter pastry and to have products with, for example, better digestion and better feeling at the end of the tasting. No? That means that first module will be molecules, second module will be the techniques that we use in pastry. This is a really long part of the course. And then we go to the point. We go to the formulation side, where through more than 30 recipes, we explain the formulation behind pastry. That means that I'm going to analyze, for example, the main ingredient that we are going to use in a recipe. That means that, for example, if we are going to use pistachio paste, I will analyze pistachio paste. Then I'm going to explain what will be the functions of each molecule that we have in pistachio paste. And then I will explain step by step how to create, for example, a creamy texture. No? In a creamy texture of pistachio, what we will need to use is like 3 techniques that will be, for example, emulsion, gelation, and thickening. These 3 techniques, they are going to help us to create the creaminess and create the stability for freezing and thaw process. And like that, step by step, I'm going to explain in that part of the course the creation of many different textures that we can use in pastry. And finally, we have the part of the course that we have so many products. We have more than 12 products, where in each product we have like 4 or 5 different recipes. And through these recipes, I explain the function of each ingredient that we are using on the recipe. And for sure, you can see the step-by-step of the recipe and the step-by-step of assembling these products. And this is just to inspire you in order to have so many examples of healthier, lighter, and tastier pastry, and then you can use these recipes in many directions. Okay, that means that course that is like 9-month guide training. We can see the molecules, we can see the techniques, and then we can see the formulation part, that is the most important part. And finally, we have so many examples of use this process of create the recipes and different textures. Okay, until here we have just a small introduction of that course, and now I'm going to move to the recipes. Okay, let's go to finish with that masterclass, because in like around 20 minutes we will finish, and let's go to move to the first recipe. Now Ramon is going to share with us the first recipe that can be perfect: mango gelette compote. Here we are using inulin in order to reduce sugar and add fiber to the recipe. This inulin is native inulin or inulin in cold from Sosa company. In that recipe, as you can see, we have like 9% of sugar that give us dry extract in the recipe and give us sweetness in the recipe. Then we have 7% of inulin that give us dry extract but not too much sweetness. Remember that inulin is like 10 times less sweet than sugar, and for this reason, this sugar, that we have 9% of the recipe is going to give us 9 points of sweetness, but inulin is going to give us only 0.7 sweetness points in our recipe. That means that inulin here is really interesting because give us dry extract, give us stability in the freezing and thaw process, but not too much sweetness in the recipe. And also it's really interesting because apports like prebiotics in the recipe. That means that we will have no fiber, prebiotic fiber inside of the recipe that is going, for example, to reduce the sugar levels in our blood. Okay. Then we have pectin for sure, because this is a mango gelate compote, and we need pectin, that is another fiber, in order to set. And then we have mango in dices, mango in puree, and then we have fresh lime juice. Since this January, we have started to work with a really good quality products from fruits that is Adamant's company, and we are using now, just from January, these purees that are really, really tasty. And what I love in that puree, the mango puree from Adamant's company, is that it's really sweet. That means that it's already without sugar, without added sugar, because this company works without added sugar. That this is also really interesting, because like that we can add the sugar that we want in the recipe. Even we can work sugar-free in our products with that puree, with this kind of purees. And what is interesting, like I was mentioning in mango puree, is that it's already sweet. Almost we can avoid the use of sugar, no? That means that added sugar. That means that this line of sugar that you have in that recipe, you can use, but if you see that using this 9% of added sugar, the first sugar that we have in your recipe, is oversweet, there is no problem. Just let's go to switch this 9% of the sugar for inulin, no? For example, you can put like from this 9% of inulin, from this 9% of sugar, you can put just 4% of sugar and keep like 5% of inulin, and like that reduce step by step, if you want, or in once, the quantity of sugar that you have in that recipe. For sure, if you are going to remove this 9% of sugar from the recipe and put 9% of inulin, that recipe will be sugar-free. No, sugar added free, because we have the naturally present sugars from mango puree. And this recipe can be sustainable, for example, for diabetic people. Okay, that means that the function here in that inulin is just give us dry extract with a huge or medium huge water catchment capacity, in order to control all the water that we have naturally present in mango dices, mango puree, and fresh lime juice. Okay, why we are using fresh lime juice in that recipe? Because pectin NH, in order to gelify, needs to be between 2.5 to 3.5. That means that this lime juice, or can be lemon juice, or you can use yuzu, or you can use other citrus juice that they are acidic, like lime or lemon. And when you add this lime juice, we are going to reduce the pH, and the pectin is going to work perfect, because we will be less than 3.5 pH in that recipe. Remember that pectin NH always needs to have or calcium presence in the recipe, or needs to have like low acidity. That means that between 2.5 to 3.5 of pH in the final recipe. If not, the pectin NH is not going to work. Okay, let's go now to move to another example. The second example will be pistachio creamy, and here we are using inulin in order to substitute sugar and add fiber. No, here we are using oligofructose. The oligofructose is really interesting, as I mentioned, because we are adding fibers in the recipes, but with in that case keeping a little bit the sweetness. No, that means that here we have like 10% of oligofructose, but this 10% of oligofructose, that more or less is 0.4, 0.5 sweetness, is going to give us between 4-5 sweetness points in the final recipe. That means that in that recipe, if we add oligofructose sweetness and the naturally present sugar that we have in pistachios, we have, like, if I'm not mistaken, around 4-5% of sugar. If we add these quantities in that recipe, we will have like 5-6 sweetness points in the final recipe. That is not too sweet. it's not too sweet, and I think that it's balanced for the kind of experience that we want with pistachio creamy. In that recipe also we have ayota. Ayota is another fiber. I love ayota in the creamy textures because it has the property to set the water but doesn't have aftertaste. We can see that in pectin, in some recipes, sometimes we can feel the aftertaste of the pectin, but when we move to ayota, it's really clean taste, at the end of the tasting process. That means that we don't have aftertaste like we have sometimes with, for example, pectin and ash. Then we have wargam. Why we are using 0.3% of wargam in that recipe together with ayota? Because ayota can be not frozen alone. It's like agar-agar. Agar-agar, ayota, that they come from seaweeds, both of them cannot be frozen alone. They need always to work with one thickening agent. Here, this is something that we explain in our course. We are using a jelly agent and a thickening agent. That means that we are using two techniques in order to control the water of the recipe. And these two techniques allows us to freeze and thaw and to have a perfect final result. If we remove wargam in that recipe, you will see that the texture will be grainy, that maybe we will have a little bit water linking out. And for this reason, in that recipe, using ayota, we work in team with wargam. Another possibility can be, for example, move to pectin acid-free from Sosa Company, that is another jelly agent. And pectins, they have the ability to freeze and thaw a little bit better. And in general, working with pectins, we can avoid thickening agents. But when we work with agar-agar or with gelatin or with ayota in creamy textures, always is much better the stability of the recipe if we need to freeze and thaw using wargam or xanthan gum or locust bean gum, different thickening agents. Okay, then we have water. We are using water in that recipe because, as you know, when we explain the concept method, for us pastry needs to be healthier, lighter, and tastier. If we add always dairy products in our recipes, always we have the aftertaste of dairy products. And here we are using a pistachio paste that is just pure paste of pistachio, really clean taste. And what we don't want is to influence the flavor by using dairy products. For this reason, we are using water in order to have a clean aftertaste. And then what we do in order to increase the creaminess is by using coconut oil. If we analyze pure pistachio paste, we have only oil, and this oil doesn't crystallize. And in the final texture, this oil gives us oily texture. If we want to transform these insaturated oils from pistachio that are really interesting because are super healthy, but we can make a better experience in order to increase the creaminess, the way is introducing saturated fats that they are going to crystallize. Like, for example, we have here with coconut oil. Coconut oil at 4 degrees is crystallized, and this gives us the ability to crystallize the oil that we have in pistachio paste. And like that, between these two different kinds of oils, we build a better creaminess in that product. And finally, we have lecithin. Lecithin works as an emulsifier. We need to bring fat and water together in our recipes, always in pastry, always in general, always we are using emulsifiers, like, for example, egg yolks and dairy products, but in that case, in order to have like clean aftertaste, here we are using just soy lecithin, or we can use sunflower lecithin in powder without problem. And then the other option here, we can use natural malt, that is a fiber, is a citrus fiber from Sosa Company, that has the ability to emulsify. That means that in that recipe, one option can be lecithin, and another option, if you want to work clean label, we say, because the citrus fiber is not an additive, lecithin is an additive. And for example, if you want to reduce the additive in that recipe, because lecithin is considered, even if it's a natural ingredient, a healthy ingredient is an additive, if you want to remove this E from the recipe, we can use citrus fiber, and like that will be like clean label that recipe. For sure, we will need to change also iota and wargam for other ingredients, but this is the direction of clean label recipes that can be interesting for other masterclass. Let's move to the last recipe. The last recipe will be the raspberry mousse. This recipe is really interesting because here what we did was to work with inulin in hot HP inulin, the one that has the properties, the ability to create like a creamy texture, no? Because what we do is to change the fat that we have in the classic recipe for that inulin in order to replace the fatty sensation. Something similar, I repeat, that is not exactly fat sensation, but it's something similar. And here we are using inulin in hot like 5% in order to replace fat sensation. Then we have fruit pectin. This is a kind of mousse, okay? And in that recipe, in order to avoid the gelatin, because there is many countries and many kind of customers that they want to avoid the use of gelatin inside of pastry. Here we are using pectin. Then we are using locust bean gum, pectin as a jelly agent, as I explained it in the other recipe. Then we are using locust bean gum, or we can use wargam as a thickening agent. And in order to improve the stability in the freezing and thaw process in that mousse. And then we have raspberry puree, one that will be for the gelation and thickening part of the recipe. And then we are going to prepare a meringue with raspberry puree, albul whip, that is the protein from the egg whites, and then sugar. And we will prepare that meringue. We are going to cook the pectin with the locust bean gum, inulin in hot, and raspberry puree around 85 degrees. That is, around 80 is enough, because at 80 degrees, pectin will be hydrated, inulin HP will be hydrated, locust bean gum also will be hydrated. And if we want to pasteurize, we can move until 85, but just arriving to 80 degrees in that part of the recipe. I repeat, inulin in hot, pectin and ash, locust bean gum, and raspberry puree number 1. In these 4 ingredients, just arriving to 80 degrees is more than enough. And then just prepare the meringue and mix in hot. This is really important. In hot, that part that is around 70 degrees, we mix with the meringue, and then we can use that mousse in order to, for example, make entremets or petit gâteau or different pastries. Okay, that means that here we have example of raspberry mousse without fat and using inulin HP. In that case, inulin in hot from Sosa in order to replace fat sensation. Okay. Let's go now to move. I'm going just to explain the different courses that we have in our school, because we have on-site courses and then we have online courses. Let's go to move to the first information that will be that one. Just 1 second that Ramon is moving the presentation. Perfect. Here we have, no, because it depends. No, it depends what you want to learn. We have different courses, no? For example, if you want to learn things for free, you have YouTube channel, for example, that you can see a lot of masterclass that we create during the last 6 years with many different topics. No, that means that this is the way to learn from us for free. You don't have to invest any money, and you will have a lot of information. Okay, this is one option. Then, if you want, for example, to move to learn, for example, everything that we explained in that masterclass in YouTube in simple way and start to practice in that direction, you have the Healthier Petit Gâteau course. This is an online course that you can just subscribe, buy the course and go directly to the training course. And here you will have like different videos where we explain the step-by-step of different products. Here in that course we have 6 different products, and I explain each recipe. Inside of each recipe I explain the function of the different ingredients, how to process for the recipe, and for sure how to assemble all these products. Then we have another option. If you want to learn, for example, healthier vegan pastry, we have that course that is the introductory course to a healthier vegan pastry, and here we have so many recipes. We invest like 6 months to develop that course, and full of a lot of examples of donuts, for example, financier, cakes, different tarts. That means that you have so many applications always in vegan and healthier direction in order to, for example, if you have a coffee shop and you want to start to introduce vegan products in your buffet, in that course is really interesting. Then another option can be that you have hotel, for example, or restaurants, and you can introduce small products in the vegan direction. Here in that course, you will have so many options. Okay, that means that these are two examples of courses. I'm going to explain two more. The introductory course of sugar-free pastry. That is really interesting in that course because through these three products, what we explain is the use of different substitutes, different ingredients that we can use for remove sugar and substitute sugar in pastry. In one of the products, we are using allulose. That is a really interesting product. Is a really interesting ingredient in order to reduce the sweetness and to remove the sweetness from the recipes. Is a really interesting ingredient that also we explain in our Big Concept online expanded course and our courses that we do in our school. And here we have like 3 examples of how to create pastry sugar-free. And then we have the modern vegan pastry course that is just a new course that we launched some months ago. And here in that course, through 3 different products, we explain modern vegan pastry. And here we have like 3 different tarts with different textures, like for example sablé, mousse, creamy, financier, different sponges that are really interesting. In that course, when you taste the products, it's amazing the texture that they have, because you cannot, it's not understandable that it's completely vegan and plant-based product. No, here in that course there is one product that I love a lot, that is one entremets that we created with mango and coconut, and there is different textures, and it's really amazing. All of them, they are amazing, but this one I love very much. And then finally, I want just to introduce for the on-site course that we do for the recipe formulation course with the Big Concept method, that we do many editions during the year. And in that course, what we do in 4 days is go directly to the point of formulation. For example, the first day we explain the theory behind compotes and gelate textures. We start to formulate recipes from scratch by using the Big Concept method. And in the second part of the day, what we do is to prepare all that recipes, we freeze and thaw, and we see the result the next day. And the next day I explain if we have to change the recipes, in what direction we need to change some ingredients, for example, or some percentage. Then in the second day, what we do is to explain creamy textures in that course. And creamy textures, we explain the different techniques. We are going to create different textures with so many flavors, and then we are going to freeze and thaw and see the different results and adjust the recipes that we freeze and thaw, because in general, always I pray in order to have some problems in the recipes in order to show you how to solve this kind of problems. And then finally, the third and fourth day, in general, we work half in creamy texture, half in mousses, and in total, in 4 days, we create more than 30 textures from scratch. That means that we explain the Big Concept method, we explain the theory behind, we create around 30 recipes from scratch, and we test all of these recipes. And like that, during these 4 days, you can learn how to create recipes from scratch adapted to your needs. It doesn't matter what are your needs. If you want to work, for example, with classic recipes, if you want to work, for example, sugar-free, or if you want to work, for example, lactose-free, plant-based, it doesn't matter, because we are going to explain all these directions, okay? And until here, all the explanation about the courses, you have You have all the information about all that courses in jordibordas.com. That means that you can go when you have time to our website and check all these courses. Please, if you have any questions, you can text us in info@jordibordas.com. And then tomorrow you will receive in our, by mail, all of you that were inscribed in that master class. You are going to receive by mail all this offer of different courses that we have in our school. And now I'm going to ask to Ramon. I don't know if we have questions. Ramon, no questions? No? Let's go to check the questions that we have, that I'm sure that will be really interesting. Just I'm reading. How do we use inulin to make a cake? A sponge cake where the eggs and whip it with sugar, and carrot cake where the sugar is creamed with butter. Yes, you can use it. The only thing is that when we use inulin and fibers that we have high water catchment capacity in a sponge, we have to be careful. Why? Because in this kind of recipes, when we have, for example, creamies, compotes, mousses, the quantity of dry extract that we have can go until 50%, more or less. It depends what kind of texture. But when we move to a sponge, for example, we can have a sponge that they have like 60, 70% of dry extract and not too much water. That means that if we overdose this quantity of fiber inside of our sponge, we can dry the texture. How we can play with inulin in one sponge. Imagine that, for example, this is a classic example. We have a dacquoise. That dacquoise, classic dacquoise from French pastry, can have until 40% of sugar. If we want to reduce the sugar in that recipe, we can, for example, substitute like 10% of sugar for inulin. That means that from this 40% of sugar, we are going to change 10% of that sugar in 10% of inulin. But also, we will need to introduce more water in that recipe. Why? Because this inulin has high water catchment capacity. That means that the right direction in order to substitute the sugar for inulin will be, okay, let's go to from 40% of sugar, change 10% of sugar per inulin, and from the rest of sugar, that will be like 30%, we can switch like 5% of that sugar per water or egg whites in that recipe. That means that we will increase the quantity of water in the final recipe, and this increasing of water in the recipe is going to hydrate that fiber that we added. That means that in the final recipe, we will have like 25% of sugar, because we did a reduction of 5%, we did a reduction of 15% of sugar. We will have like 5% of added egg whites, and we will have like 10% of inulin. And like that, we can use in a sponge. In general, we use in a sponge maximum until 10% of inulin. Inulin, native inulin, only native inulin. Okay, this is one example to reduction of sweetness in one sponge. If we want, for example, to make sugar-free sponge, what we can do is to switch all the sugar from one sponge to oligofructose. This is one option. Why? Because oligofructose has the property to sweet a little bit, half of the sugar, but even like that sweets a little bit. And then oligofructose has water catchment capacity similar to sugar. That means that, for example, in a sponge where you have 20% of sugar, you can remove this 20% of sugar and put 20% of oligofructose. Oligofructose works one by one in sponges without problem. Okay, the problem is inulin. Inulin, because catch much more water than oligofructose, we cannot switch 1-to-1, and we need to add water in the recipe. Oligofructose, no. Oligofructose, if we have like 20% of sugar, or we want just to switch 10% of sugar, we can move 1-to-1, and like that we will have a balanced texture. This works in different kind of sponge without problem. Just keep in mind that fibers, if we are going to use too much, they dry the texture, and this can be a problem in a mousse, in a cream, in a compote, in a sponge. that we can find if we overdose the quantity, okay? Let's go to the next question. I don't know if, how do you think it's possible to use inulin in meringue for macarons sugar-free? This is a question that a lot of people tell to us. And the point is that we cannot use fibres when we need to recrystallize sugar. No, what's happened? When we have sugar in one recipe, this sugar, when we're going to dry in the oven, for example, is going to recrystallize and is going to come back the original state. That means that we will have crystals of sugar, and this is what makes us the crunchy texture in one crumble or in one macaron or, for example, in one pavlova, no? Because this is always the question. How to reduce sugar in macaron and, for example, pavlova, no? And the point is that if we use fiber in that kind of textures, because fibers, they are long chains of molecules, they keep like flexible. And when we are going to taste the product, we see like it's a kind of chewing gum, no? It's flexible and has elasticity. And this, for this reason, it's not possible to use inulin or oligofructose in general in this kind of textures. You can try to switch a part of the sugar for oligofructose in a small quantity and try and see what's happened. But not, for example, more than 5% in one recipe, because more than 5% is going to keep the elasticity, and this will be not interesting. This is what I can share to you for the meringues, for the macarons and for the pavlova, because it's one product that in general we don't produce in our school. One day we are going to try, because there is a lot of people that ask about that, and we will try to find a solution for reduction of sugar in this kind of recipes. There is more questions, Ramon. No, sorry. So to confirm, we cannot replace all the sugar for native inulin in sponges, okay? We can just replace the total of sugar in one recipe in textures like, for example, compote, creamy mousses, textures, because we have a lot of water, no? In recipes that you see that there is a small quantity of water, like, for example, a sponge or, for example, sablé, we cannot use inulin. Here, in this kind of recipes like sponge or sablé, we are going to use only oligofructose. In the recipes like compotes, for example, where we have like 70% of water, here, without problem, we can replace all the sugar for inulin, okay? And then does inulin bind water in the same way than sugar? Better. No, better than sugar, no? Because inulin, what do is to absorb the water and give us much more stability, because sugar also absorbs water, but not in the same direction. We can say that inulin has much more water catchment capacity than sugar. Sugar is really low water catchment capacity, inulin is really high, okay? Let's go to the next question. Can we make Italian meringue by using inulin in cold? Not possible. You can try with oligofructose. With oligofructose, I think that will be possible. With inulin, the problem is that inulin starts to absorb. I already did this test, and this test. Sorry. And the point is that when you start to cook the water with inulin, inulin starts to absorb water and starts to boil very fast and very thick, and it's not possible to mix with the whites. No, that means that forget to make Italian meringue with inulin, and just you can use Italian meringue by using oligofructose. With oligofructose, because it has really similar properties than sugar, I think that will be possible. And then the other option is that use French meringue without cooking process, no? For example, when we are using inulin, imagine that we have white chocolate mousse, no? And we want to add a meringue in white chocolate mousse, but without sweetness, no? We can prepare a meringue with 70% of egg whites and 30% of inulin, and by using these two ingredients, we can add air to the recipe without adding fat and sweetness, no? Because this meringue of 70% of egg whites and 30% of inulin doesn't have sweetness at all, like 3 points of sweetness. It's really a small amount of sweetness. And for example, in some recipes, instead of just Italian meringue, you can use this kind of meringue. When we explain in the third and fourth day, for example, in the on-site course where we explain the B-concept method, and we explain how to calculate mousses, for example, always we explain the aeration by using or whipping cream, or using like French meringue or direct meringue that we can use many directions. And for example, we can prepare a meringue 70% of egg whites, 30% with inulin. We can use a meringue 60% of egg whites, 40% of oligofructose. And these two meringues we can use in pastry in order to introduce earth. This is something that we explain in the course. Why we work with oligofructose and why we work with inulin, and why one meringue is 70-30 and one meringue is 60-40. Because when we have more water catchment capacity, like in inulin, we need to increase egg whites in order to balance the texture, the final texture of the meringue. When we are using oligofructose that has lower water catchment capacity, what we do is to increase the quantity of oligofructose and reduce the egg whites that we have in the recipe. For this reason, when we are using low water catchment capacity ingredients in one meringue, what we do is 60-40, and when we use ingredients like inulin in cold that has high water catchment capacity, what we do is to use a meringue 70-30. This topic we can just prepare a next masterclass because it's really interesting how to aerate a pastry product by using a meringue but without sugar. Okay, let's go to the next question. What about other properties that sugar brings, such a caramelization, leavening? This I don't understand. Aeration, gluten retardation. There is no problem in general because we are explaining reduction of sugar. Still, we have sugars in our recipes. There is no problem in general. Everything that we did in that direction by using inulin, always it works. For sure, when we have inulin, and we are reducing sugars in one sponge, and we are reducing sugars in one sponge by using inulin, the caramelization will be less, because less sugar, less caramelization. But anyway, we always have a small amount of sugar that they are going to work in that directions. But even if we just remove all the sugars because we want, for example, to work in sugar-free pastry, always we will try to find a solution in that direction. Then about caramelization, we have one option that is oligofructose. Oligofructose, it caramelizes, like for example, like sugar, and we can create even a praline by using just oligofructose. For example, 60% of nuts and 40% of oligofructose. We can caramelize the oligofructose, add the nuts toasted, we mix, and then we blend, and you will have a praline sugar-free that has also caramelization process. That means that by using inulin, caramelization is not the best option, but if we move to oligofructose, that is another fiber, we will have caramelization as an example. Okay, and aeration, I already explained it. Usually, I do almond anti-cream for a dessert with an infusion of sugar almond paste, gel creme from Sosa Company and Natural Mold. The texture is really good that day, but the next day is a bit softer. Okay, let me think. We have infusion, that I imagine that is water or dairy products. Here we have sugar, almond paste. Sugar and almond paste They are really interesting because give us dry extract in the recipe. Then we have gel creme from Sosa company that is modified starch that give us thickening properties. And then really interesting because you added nature malt that is emulsifier, perfect. That means that the balance is perfect in that recipe because we have the techniques that we need to have in order to have a perfect stability. Here we have like two options. If you want a more thick texture, harder texture, here you can add a little bit of iota, for example, in a really small quantity, like 0.2%, 0.3 maximum, even 0.1. This will be one way in order to have a little bit more texture, and the other point will be to increase the quantity of gel creme in that recipe. If I have to choose, I will introduce a little bit of iota. Why I explain this? Because iota is going to control better the water than if we use only gel creme. And the final texture, even if it's a little bit harder, we can just work a little bit with a whisk and we will have like softer texture. In that case, in that recipe, what's happening is that the starch in one day, I imagine that relax and lose a little bit the water catchment capacity that has the first day. And for this reason, in general, you have softer texture. And the solution can be just adding one jelly agent. Here, as you can see, we are using only two techniques, that is thickening and emulsion. Thickening by using gel creme, and emulsion by using nature malt. If you add gelation by using iota, between 0.1 to 0.3% of the recipe, you will see that this texture will have more body, and then just adapting, working a little bit the texture, you will have a super nice texture. If you want, you can send to us the recipe and we will check this better with the proportions of that ingredient, okay? Let's go. Are the courses sustainable for amateurs? Is there a specific course that it is the best start with? Here I just know, first for us the most important is the motivation that you have. That means that if you want to learn, it doesn't matter the direction that you are going to take, but for sure in the course, in the online extended course of the big concept, recipe formulation from scratch, and the on-site course of the big concept, that we create recipes from scratch and we explain a lot of parameters. If you are amateur, there is not a problem, but the only point is that we recommend to you to have experience. That means that I know amateurs that they have like 10 years experience, and even they have more experience and they know more than me, perfect. That means that to go in some courses like these two courses of the formulation, online, on-site, it's always recommended to have a little bit of experience. For the other courses that we have in the online products, the introductory vegan healthier course, the modern vegan pastry, the products from Vitrina, Vitrina display, the 6 products from the display course, introductory course to the concept philosophy. In this kind of courses, it doesn't matter if you are amateur or professional, you can learn a lot. But in the ones that we teach the formulation from scratch, here we recommend, even if you are amateur, just to have experience. And we already had a lot of amateurs that they came to our course and everybody was happy, really happy. The point is that more experience you have, even in amateur way, the more you are going to absorb and use that course. Okay, there is next question. A lot of questions. Thank you very much. How would you recommend to that I'm reading in the screen and substitute egg yolks in the chocolate cream base on the crème anglaise with inulin and cold? There is no problem. When you have egg yolks and you want to reduce egg yolks, you want to remove egg yolks in order to remove the aftertaste, that also I hate the aftertaste of the egg yolks in recipes that there is no sense to be, the function is that egg yolks, they work like emulsifier, no? Mainly. That means that, for example, if we have 5% of egg yolks in one recipe, we can just remove the egg yolks, but we need to add lecithin, no, between 0.2 until 1%, 0.2 until 1% in the recipe. And then we can use, for example, citrus fiber naturemol from 0.5 until 1.5%. The point is that it depends what kind of emulsifier, how we are going to substitute the rest of the egg yolk that we are removing from the recipe. In general, by working in creamy texture, in creamy textures like chocolate creamy texture, you can put water. That means that, for example, if we are going to substitute egg yolks for lecithin in one chocolate creamy texture, and I have 5% of egg yolks, I'm going to put 0.5 of lecithin, 4.5 of egg yolks, I'm going to put just water in the recipe, and the rest of the ingredients exactly the same, okay? And like that, we are going to remove the egg yolks, and we will have aftertaste that will be much better, no? Without, if this is the goal, aftertaste without egg yolks, okay? Let's go to the next question. Just 1 second, I'm going to drink water. Sorry, just 1 second. Yes, can we reach the same level of sweetness by using, imagine, by using inulin or oligofructose? No. Always when we are reducing inulin, it doesn't matter if it's inulin in cold, inulin in hot, or oligofructose. Always we are reducing the sweetness. And here, if this is not the goal, that means that, for example, I want to make sugar-free pastry, but I want to keep the sweetness, the option is to work, for example, with oligofructose, and then use a high-intensive sweetener, like, for example, stevia, for example, or sucralose, that they are going to add the sweetness that we need. No, for example, in one recipe that we are using, no, in a sponge, that we are using 20% of sugar. Okay, we want to remove the sugar and we put 20% of oligofructose because Jordi tells us that oligofructose works in a sponge and it's going to work. But we see that the sweetness is half of the one that we had. There is no problem. Just add sucralose, for example. It's not the best healthier option, but it's an option in order to increase the sweetness in a really small amount, because sucralose can be between 300 until 600 times more sweet than sugar. No, that means that we are going to use like 0.01, 0.02% in one recipe in a really small amount. And like that, we are going to reduce sugar contents in the recipe, or we are going to remove the sugar contents. We can add oligofructose that is going to keep, for example, in a sponge, similar reactions and sweetness. No, we keep a little bit of sweetness, and with the sucralose that we add in our recipe, what we do is just to balance the final sweet sensation that we have in the product. As I mentioned, we have sucralose and then we have stevia. The stevia, the point is that has aftertaste, and sometimes the aftertaste the people don't like. That means that sucralose is an option that doesn't have aftertaste, and it's really, really, really interesting. The only point is that it's not a super healthy option. But then we have to think that the quantity that we are going to ingest will be really, really small. And if the direction that we want is to work sugar-free, for example, a diabetic person, it's interesting to use oligofructose plus sucralose or other options of high sweetener ingredients that we can find in the market. Okay. Next question. Thank you very much for your questions. Really, really interesting. This, I don't know. This is, I cannot give you this answer now. How would you substitute the eggs in a fried choux? I'm not sure. If you want, you can send the example of what you want to do to info@jordibordas.com, and in the next days we will try to answer you about this. We will check with the team and see if there is any option, or we can give you some idea in that direction. I cannot control everything in pastry. I don't know everything. Just let's go to the next question.
No more questions.
No more questions. Amazing. Thank you very much. Okay. Just remember that the current edition of Big Concept online extended course, you can enroll if you want. That means that you can join this group that started just this week. Just text us to info@jordibordas.com, or you can go directly to the jordibordas.com, our webpage, in order to enroll. And thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for support our project. We hope so that this masterclass helps you to understand much better how it works, Inulin, Oligofructose, and Inulin HP. And see you soon. And remember, subscribe to our channel. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye. Have a lovely week. Kiss you. Bye-bye.